Ever wanted to create your very own chatbot app from scratch? Rest assured, in today's video, we're going to be going through exactly that. In part one of this video, we're going to be going through how to create a backend API that works with Watson Assistant. Specifically, we're going to be using Node.Js, Express, and the IBM Watson Assistant APIs. And in part two of this series, we're going to be going through how to create an amazing front end using React.js. Stay tuned, let's get to it. We're going to start off this project by creating a folder on our desktop, and inside that folder we're going to install Node using the npm init command. Once that's done, we're going to install our dependencies. In this case, our backend to our application is going to be using Express. So we're going to be installing Express as well as the IBM Watson package. We're also going to install some dev dependencies. In this case, we're going to be installing NodeMon. So that's going to help us out later on when we want to enable hot refreshing. That's just going to save us a whole heap of time when we're making updates to our backend API. Now that that's done, we're going to start setting up our server. So to do that, we're going to import our dependencies, Express obviously being one of them. We're also going to set up some routes, which are going to be outside of this server, and we're going to be running this server on, or this API on port 5000. We can then test out our server by using the npm start command, and you can see it's successfully running on port 5000. Now, what we actually want to do, as I said before, is use NodeMon so that we've got hot refreshing. We can use the NodeMon server command to enable that. And you can see, as we're making changes, we can change from hello world to hello everyone. And each time we save, our server's going to refresh. Now, in order to work with Watson Assistant, we're going to need a few details. Specifically, we're going to need our API key, our assistant URL, and our assistant ID. We can grab this from an assistant we've already set up. We just need to go to Settings and API Details. We can copy these over and throw them into our env folder, so this is going to make them available throughout our application. If you haven't set up an assistant, that's fine. Highly recommend you check out the free crash course. It's going to walk you through how to do all of that. Now, the first thing that we're going to do for our backend routes, and specifically our backend APIs, is create a session API. So when we're working with Watson Assistant, each of our messages that we send to our assistant are going to be required to be accompanied by a session token. We're going to name our session API /session. So when we import this specific route into our overall Express server, we're going to append that with API/Watson. So in the end, our entire route is going to be /API/Watson/session. We can use the create session function from Watson Assistant to get a session ID. And in this case, we also need to pass through our assistant ID when we're making that request. Now, if we're successful, we want to send back our session ID to our front-end user. And if not, then we're just going to send out a message that says that there was a bit of an error. We're going to import our routes from the watson.js file into our server.js file, and we're going to prepend all of these API requests with /API/Watson. So that means whenever we make a request, it's going to go to API/Watson/session in order to get our session ID. Now we're going to test out our API using Postman. If you don't have Postman installed, I highly recommend installing it, especially if you're building any APIs. You can see we've made our request and we've successfully got our session ID. Now that that's all well and done, we're going to create another route, and this time we're going to specify this route to handle our messages. So ideally what we're going to have is incoming messages, and we're going to pass those to our Watson Assistant API. And ideally what we should get back is a response from our assistant. So if we said hello, we'd probably expect some sort of greeting back. In order to make requests to our assistant, we're going to use the message function, again from Watson Assistant, and this is going to take one parameter. In this case, it's payload, and our payload is basically all the stuff that we need to send to our Watson Assistant API in order to successfully receive a message back. Now, our payload needs to consist of three key things: our assistant ID, our session ID that we're going to get from our previous API call, and the input. So our input consists of what type of input it is. So in this case, it's text, as well as the message itself. And again, we're going to test out our API using Postman. So in this case, we're going to be making a request to the message API, and realize that you named your header parameter session ID incorrectly in your code. So in this case, it's not going to work. We can then make an adjustment to our code to re-specify our session ID and make that same request again. And given we're ordering some ice cream, we're going to be asked what flavor we'd like to order. We can then test this out a little bit further, and you can see we're successfully receiving messages now. And that about wraps up our APIs. So thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Hopefully you found this tutorial useful. Now, if you did, be sure to like, share, and subscribe it, and stay tuned for part 2. We're going to be going through how to create an amazing front end using React.js. Peace.